So I already showed you the project that we're going to be working with. And what we're going to be doing in this section first and foremost is going to be working with App Center, but one important part inside of App Center would be to set up how are we going to distribute our applications. And in that, GitHub is going to be playing an important part. Of course, you can use other form of version control, but I find that GitHub works very well. Of course, many of you may already be familiar with GitHub, especially if you have been using it to download or fork the project that is right here, advancedxamarin_expenses. But during this lecture, we're going to learn how to set up a new repository and, of course, upload our code that I just showed you in the previous lecture. So the first thing, of course, is to navigate over to github.com and log in. I am logged in right here, and what I'm going to do is simply create a new repository. And I'm going to give it a name. This is going to be Advanced Xamarin, simply because this is part of the course, and underscore, and this is the finance project. As you can see, my projects are related to finance all the time. This one is about a finance blog, in case you didn't understand that thing because it's in Spanish. That is not important. What is important is that I set a description in here, and I'm going to set it as public because I want all of my students to have access to it. If you have a paid version of GitHub, you can also set this to private if you want to be the only one to have access to it. It's important that you do not initialize this repository with a README, and I'm going to go ahead and create the repository. And all I have to do now is follow these steps. So I already have my code. All I have to do is follow these steps to set this as the remote and be able to push to my remote. So let me actually go ahead and copy the HTTPS link to my Git repository, and I'm going to navigate over to Visual Studio, not exactly to link or set the remote. I usually do that on the command line, but what I want to do is right click on my solution and rebuild in Finder so I can quickly navigate over to where this is located. And from here, I can take a look at where this is by simply getting the info for any of the elements. And I can take a look at this and find that this is inside of my user and my projects folder inside of the finance project. So what I will do is open the terminal and cd into my projects folder and cd into my finance project. So here is where my project is located. And so let me navigate back to GitHub and keep my terminal here on the side. All I have to do is follow the steps that are there on GitHub to create the repository. So the first thing, of course, is to initialize Git. Once I have initialized this, in my case, I'm actually going to add everything. So I can type git add -a to add everything to the new commit. I will just set a quick comment in here for the first commit, and I will add the remote. So git remote add origin, and I will paste the URL to my repo, which is this that I just copied from GitHub. And once I have added the remote, I can simply push to origin my master branch, which is so far the only branch that I have. And so this is going to request my Git credentials. And of course, it will just take a few seconds to upload all of my code over to the repo. And once the master branch has been uploaded to my remote branch, I actually can come here to GitHub and reload it to see all of my code now in here. Now, before moving forward, I do want to create 3 branches in here. So the reason why I will want 3 branches, and actually eventually I will have more masters, but I will talk about it as I create them, is that over on App Center, and we'll take a look at that in the next few lectures, we will be able to distribute one branch to the developers, so developers keep working on this branch. We usually will have a branch for testers, so we can distribute to our testers, not our users yet, but maybe testers inside of our organization, maybe beta testers outside of our organizations, but still a more controlled environment. And eventually the master branch over to the stores. So that is why right here I am going to create the developer branch. And of course, this branch is going to be right now created from master. So the developers and the master branches are even. And then also create the testers branch. So far all of these branches, I have 3 branches in here, are all in the same point. Now I will also have more branches eventually. In fact, let me go ahead and create the branch for the previous lecture, which is Advanced Xamarin 0470 new project, and create this again from branch. This is again for the previous lecture, so you can download it. But eventually what I will have is more branches and maybe push the changes by making a pull request from one of the other branches. Now, because I have this project right here with new branches, I will have to do something related to these branches over in Visual Studio. So let me navigate over to Visual Studio. So here in Visual Studio, the first thing that you may notice is that we now see that there is a master thing inside of parentheses in our solution. This means that we're currently on the master branch. But what I want to do is go to version control with my solution selected and go to manage branches and remote and create a new branch. My branch is going to be first the developers branch. And what this branch is going to track the origin developers branch. And I'm going to hit on OK. So what this means is that this branch is going to be by default, for example, pushing to the developers branch. Also, by the way, if you don't see these branches, you may need to go over to remote sources right here in this same window and fetch everything from origin. And also, I'm going to be creating the testers branch. I may not be using these too much. Most of the things that we're going to be using with testers is going to happen from GitHub. We will take a look at that in the next few lectures, but I will track the testers branch from origin in this branch. And so what I can do is simply select the developers branch and switch to this branch. Visual Studio may request some information from me, and I will just switch to that branch. And you can see how now we see developers inside of parentheses over on our solution. And so now any commit and any push that we do will go to that particular branch. So this is the basic setup for GitHub. In the next few lectures, we're going to go ahead and prepare App Center to start to work with App Center, prepare it so it can start to connect to our application. Eventually, as we progress through this section, we're going to be able to set up some distribution to different teams. And in fact, we're actually going to be implementing inside of our application some reporting so that information of how our users use our application goes over to App Center.